Hello and welcome to this Skiddle and She-Said-So panel on Raving, Race and Responsibility, unpacking unconscious bias in the live sector. So this is not exactly how we imagined doing the panel this year, in a room with no one in it, but we're just grateful to be able to have this conversation. You might see that the panel's slightly changed. Unfortunately, we had a few issues with travel and unfortunately health, so Sacha's kindly stepped in for us. Just in case you want to know what the panel's about. If you're unsure on what unconscious bias is, or you're a promoter, artist manager, or someone in the industry looking to learn more about how to make music spaces more positive and inclusive, then you're in the right place. It's been a huge year following the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, and as described by Kwame Kwarteng on our previous guest list podcast around racism in the music industry, the other pandemic of racism, which ignited protests across the UK, US and many other countries following the murder of George Floyd by a police officer in Minneapolis on May 25th. So we want to continue the conversation from our podcast, and this time focusing on unconscious bias and how that translates into the exclusion of communities from music spaces in the UK, and how we can create positive experiences for everyone. So this is a pertinent time. As you all know, there's really no events unless you're doing something socially distant. So we want to use this time now for promoters and venue owners to learn a bit more about how they can make their spaces more inclusive and better for everyone. So today I'm joined by three panellists for this discussion, so that you can introduce yourself, starting with Nix. Would you like to?
Hi, I'm Nix and I'm the co-founder of the recently formed Black Bandcamp.
I'm Charlotte. I've been an artist manager both for other people and independently for 7 years, and I also am senior manager of rights management at AWOL.
I'm Sacha. I've been a DJ manager and artist booker for around about 20 years. I now run Data Transmission Radio and own Dexterous Productions, and I'm here on the board at BMC.
Great, thank you. And I'm Georgia. I'm the marketing manager at Skiddle. So thanks everyone for joining. So I'd like to start with quite a big question, really. Who's been excluded from the dance floor and why?
All of us at the moment.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's true.
Yeah. I mean, really, for our culture and for the dance music, rave culture, it was always born on inclusion, and that was where I fell in love with it. When I first started raving, it was all about the fact that I could walk into a club as a female, dressed flamboyantly in whatever way I wanted, and I felt completely included as soon as I walked in that club. And I think, unfortunately, some of the things that have kind of developed over the years have taken away from that kind of true inclusion, respect, unity, and the things that our dance floors, because there's obviously lots of different types of dance floors, but our dance floors in electronic dance music is always supposed to be about that. And I think some of maybe the VIP culture, that side of things, has kind of leaked into it and made it much more showy, more about money, less about the music. And I think that's where we really need to get back to, is to be able to walk in a club and everybody to know that it doesn't matter whether you're black, white, rich, poor, where you come from, who you are, we are all one, and that's where we need to be.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I grew up on garage raves and jungle raves, and in that environment you could have turned up in whatever outfit you want to wear and you always felt safe. You always had a group around you. It was always felt safe, and I think that safety has regressed, and it's less and less safe. If we're talking as a panel of women, for women to be in those spaces, I used to go to a rave on my own or to a festival on my own, and obviously when you're younger you have less fear anyway, but with zero fear, and I think violence at festivals and things like that has increased. So from that perspective, in terms of actually turning up to a rave as a individual, that's become more and more difficult. I would also say that there's more tribalism in terms of scenes and who you're associated with and your friends, and less kind of merging of that tribalism, and that's a natural human thing to be in a tribe of sorts, but I think it's becoming more and more closed off, and I think we see that politically, I think we see that culturally, people becoming more and more protective of their space, but therefore not reaching out to others. But then musically, we're becoming much more mood-based rather than genre-based, so you think it would be the opposite in terms of live spaces, so I don't know.
I think if you look at in the past decade where the electronic scene has become a lot more commercialised. Okay, it never used to be commercial. It never used to have a hierarchy. It used to be everyone walks in with the same mindset, regardless of creed, etc. Since the commercialisation of the underground, it's not underground anymore, electronic scene, what you see is groups of people who have historically been marginalised. That framework has now been seeped into our industry. So if you, pre-2000, if you look in US 80s, 90s, with the birth of like New York and Chicago house, gay communities, black and brown communities, anyone could enter and feel safe. And this kind of idea of people having to create their own safe spaces is quite sad because people are so marginalised and pushed to the sphere of what's supposed to be an underground dancing that people then go on to create their own safe spaces. So I think, for me, there's a point at where the underground electronic scene is not actually underground anymore. It's completely a commercial entity with the number one aim for people being profit and how do we exploit and profit people. And that exploitation, if you look at who's being exploited and who's benefiting, that tells you exactly who's being excluded and who are actually being dismissed, overlooked and underpaid.
I mean, it's, like you said, it's the marginalised communities that it all started from, and that's everybody was there, and it wasn't the majority that was going to those underground clubs. And like you said, now with the commercialism of it, the people that are winning out of it are the 1%, and it is across the board.
It's people selling tables, it's people selling bottles and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the big corporations that have got you can pay that much money for DJs and do those big events, or it's the VIP culture that has come in and done that. And it is reflective of society. It's the 1% that are winning, and everybody else from the dance floor to the smaller DJs to the people working behind the bar to absolutely everybody else is suffering.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a party that goes on in Tottenham now, and it's kind of Persian led. I think the brand is called Mamouni, and it's literally you pay a couple of quid on the door and everyone is invited, and it's literally like the first time I went a while ago. It was it might have been last year. Who knows? Time is just a construct now. And I went, and I was like, as a very white person, and like from the countryside, and I went, and it's like this Persian party, and it's like the most incredible place with all this like Iranian disco music, which is just like phenomenal. And you pay a couple of quid, and it's just about the vibe, and everyone is invited, and that like is so like reminds me of when I was like 20, and I just really wish there was more spaces like that, and it's really hard to find without being like a cool kid. Like there's certain parties you have to go to because you're like a cool kid. You have to know them and all that kind of thing. It's
Yes, I think the key for me is about the intention of why people are going out in the first place. And if your intention is to hang around in a gang and be standing around and, looking at what girls are walking in that night, and that kind of gang culture has gone in, whereas if your intention is you're going out for the music, you're going out with your mates, you're going to have a fun time, and your intention is that you're going to meet new people in there as well. And you want to meet those new people. It's not just about going out with your group and not talking to anybody else. And so if we can get that intention for people to be going out for the music and not, if they want to go out to pool, go to those places. I'm not saying that we don't all meet people and start new relationships within our music communities, but if your intention is to go out and that's it, and you're not going for the music, then somehow I think, can we separate it again? Can we reset,
So when you talk about these marginalised communities, do you think unconscious bias comes into play? What is unconscious bias for people watching at home and they're not sure?
I think unconscious bias can be both positive and negative. We always assume it's completely negative. It's only about people having a negative view on a group of people and acting on it. It's also positive. If there is a universal or collective view of someone or group of people that's positive, then those are people that will benefit from unconscious bias. Unfortunately, what happens is it's the same groups of people that benefit from unconscious bias and the same groups of people who don't. So for me, unconscious bias is a view or inherent. It's usually socialized and internalized, and that's the point people need to understand. It's not something that I think people purposely say, oh, I'm going to decide to exclude Sacha. It's something that's been taught to you and you internalize and it's socialized and it's just in your brain. So you might have a view of a certain type of person or people and you act on that prejudice. And that's where the marginalization begins and the exclusion begins. But on the flip side, I want people to remember that there's positive unconscious bias. So if you look at lineups, if you look at who owns venues, promoters, who are the bookers, it's all the same type of people, because if you have a positive unconscious bias about someone, you're going to hire them. You're more likely to hire them than you are over the other person.
Someone.
Right? So that's the two points I want people to remember. It's positive and negative, and also it's inherent and socialised. Nobody, I don't think anyways, wakes up and says, do you know what, I'm going to have a horrible view of these type of people. It's something that's taught to you over time. And the point is about unlearning and relearning and re-educating yourself. That's where the action is, because we can't control what's kind of forced into our brains. We have to teach ourselves to unlearn and relearn certain things.
Yeah.
I think the like Black Lives Matter movement has been really, really kind of exemplary of this, in terms of it's not enough to just be not racist or to say you're not racist or biased or whatever. We all have a duty every day to go around and question why we're making decisions, why we think a certain way about certain people, why we're hiring that person, why we're not hiring the other person. And it's really hard to do, because you're having to question yourself, and that's uncomfortable, and it's not pleasant to have shine like a light on your own thinking. And like you say, it's not because no one's accusing you of going around being like purposefully racist or biased or whatever, prejudice. It's just, it is a subconscious thing. And I think like promoters, bookers, agents, everyone has a duty. We all have a duty, whatever role you were in, moving around the world, let alone the music industry, is to start examining, thinking, being more thoughtful about why you're doing things. And, we all see the festival lineups. We all see there is a severe lack of women. And then we start going into black women. And, I go back to Persian culture, just because I manage a Persian artist. Like, there's no Persian people on lineups, and if those bookers really consciously looked at their lineups, and it's not because there's a lack of talent. There's not a lack of talent in any culture. Like, do me a favour, give me a break.
Tools such as Black Bandcamp are out there to help people.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not for lack of talent or quality in any minority. And I don't like to use, I kind of really hate the word minority, because that just assumes that we're living we live in a very global world, and Persian people are not a minority because there is a whole Persian culture and they have their own, and we live in a global world, and you can go and book someone from that culture if you want, and you can fly them in. Just because they're not on your doorstep doesn't mean they're a minority globally, or whoever you're talking about.
I agree with that point, yeah.
It really bugs me, keep using this word minority, because no one's a minority, and it's the same as like women. We're not a minority or a thing. We're just quieter and all that kind of thing. So I think it's just looking. Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Anyone can attest to that. But it's changing that mindset from being very white, very Western, the UK and the US being the dominant culture, and it's just trying to adjust that. And I don't really know what the answer to that is, but it's just kind of
So how do we tackle the unconscious bias? Like, is there any tools out there that help?
I think first and foremost, I mean, what you were saying about, nobody likes to question themselves. Well, people should.
Yeah.
It's a healthy thing to do, not just to walk around going, I think I know everything, and that's the way it is, So people do need to question themselves and do look at their unconscious actions so that they start to become conscious of those actions. And that's the only way they're going to actually realise that, of course, there is programming. Everybody has had programming. We are, our environment, we're all products of where we grew up, who we grew up with, how things were when we were younger, all of those kind of things. So, and you can go to certain areas, and of course there's going to be a lot more racism and a lot more, minority persecution and all of those kind of things. But what people have to do, first and foremost, is go, why am I doing it? Why am I feeling like this? Am I right to feel like this? Am I being disrespectful? Am I being dismissive? And am I being inclusive? And actually just keep on asking themselves the questions, because if people don't ask themselves questions, then we're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And the stereotypes, everybody has stereotypes, and it's kind of breaking hold of those stereotypes and going, just because I'm black, white, female, who, whatever it might be, doesn't mean I am that stereotype of that person. I came into this industry as a page 3 model, and I was in the Sun and all of that, and obviously, as a page 3 model, as soon as you arrive, you are judged.
Yeah.
Before you even open your mouth, I'm from Essex, blonde, all of that kind of thing. So, I hadn't opened my mouth and everybody starts to judge, and you see it and you deal with it, and most of the time people aren't meaning anything bad by it, but they don't realise that they've already stereotyped you, they've already put labelled you and put you wherever. And what I always had to do was fight harder and harder and harder to know, no, just because I'm blonde and I was a page 3 model doesn't mean I haven't got a brain, and really try to kind of break that stereotype. Something that's happening in our industry at the moment, which I feel is very, very prevalent, and, that is why we are here, it is the music business. And there is a huge movement that I've seen of female techno artists that are ruling the techno game. Yes, obviously there's some massive brilliant techno artists as well, but the females are ruling that game at the moment, and they are strong and they have firepower and they are taking no shit. And it shows that they want to break down that stereotype and go, we might be female, but we can be harder, stronger, faster, and we can do that. And that's where I think we all have a responsibility to break down those stereotypes and go, it doesn't matter. You can be female and be a car mechanic. It doesn't matter. People need to stop judging, stop creating that bias, when really, if they really look at themselves and really realise that we are in 2020 now and we're not in the 1950s or 60s or 70s, and, it's not about feminism, it's about respect. For me, it's always been about respect.
I think also it's like, it's almost like a laziness, because if you look over the past couple of years, the rise of like Afrobeats music that was never even really present in like commercial top 40 completely permeated top 40. And then there's Latin music and, music coming out of South America and Spanish speaking music that has completely permeated, like, top 40, Billboard 100. And so actually it's almost this laziness of like kind of thinking that the average consumer can't possibly conceive of music that isn't in their language or isn't from their perspective. And it's like, that's just so utterly lazy to think that the average consumer can only comprehend that.
Take us for fools.
Yeah, it's just so lazy and one-dimensional. And I think the average consumer is proving time and time again that they are more than capable of listening to music that might not be in their language or the rhythm pattern that they're used to or whatever, and still being able to understand and enjoy it. When you're in a club, you're not like listening to the words and translating them, you're just getting the energy. And like I work with artists, and we did a track with like these Egyptian rappers, and it's all in Arabic, and we went out to Cairo and we worked with them. They didn't speak English. We definitely didn't speak Arabic. And we made a well, me just sitting there, like, but the producer and these rappers made an incredible track, and you can listen to that track, and it's so hard and so sick, and it's like, why is that so difficult for the powers that be to understand that the average consumer can handle that and enjoy it and pay money for it, and etc., etc. So I think that there's such a laziness from the higher ups.
Yeah.
When booking and all that kind of thing, they
Just looking at the money.
Yeah, and but there's money. Like, all these Latin artists are making so much money, and you know, there are people that are seriously making bank. But it's like, we just sit here in our little bubble and can't even conceive of that, because it's it's maybe untested and all that kind of thing. And it'd just be really, wouldn't the music industry, like, we all got into it. None of us got into it really to be rich. Like, come on, like, if you do that, then, like, great. We all got in it because we were really excited about music, and it got us going. Like, I studied law. I could be driving like a Bentley by now or something, and I'm not. But I love my job, and I got into it because I love the scene and the music and going to the jungle raves. And it's like, where do people lose that love as they go up? To be the powers that be. I don't know. That's how it feels to me.
So to the end user, the customer, someone who's going on the dance floor, like, why is it important to be able to go to these diverse nights? Why is the diverse range of music important?
Well, you should be looking for something new and interesting and exciting, because if it's something you've seen before, heard before, or done before, then it's not going to be that exciting to you. It's just reliving something. People should be going out there for new experiences. The kids shouldn't be just looking for how bright the lights are or how big the show is. Go to experience the music, go to different types of music venues to experience live music, techno music, Persian music, disco music, whatever it is, Do you
think that goes some way towards tackling, like, unconscious bias, like negative unconscious bias?
I think unconscious bias, the only way to deal with it is for responsibility. Responsibility for each and everybody in the club, in the industry, in the business, actually take responsibility for what they do and how they do it, and be brave. Like, there's a real call for our industry to be brave and not just go, oh yes, just book the same lineups with the same DJs because they've got the biggest pull.
Or fly that person in from,
look at the talent. Really look at the talent. Don't just look at if they're the biggest name that all the kids knowing and they're getting all of the limelight right now, because just because they're getting all the limelight doesn't mean there's not a huge amount of talent out there that could be, could come through if people would be braver. We did a interview with David Morales just in the middle of lockdown as a BMC warm-up. And David Morales was saying that many of the record labels have not been brave. The UK, especially UK record labels, have not been brave.
Amen to that.
Yeah, and it's the same for promoters, for labels, for venues, everybody. People need to be brave, go with their actions, take responsibility, go, no, this club, everybody is going to be equal when they walk in the door. And people do it. There are clubs, like you said, the ones you're going to. Elro is, for me, one of the ones that are really showing people how it's done, because when you walk into a proper Elro gig, the vibe, it's the magic, it's that that you walk in, and from the toilet attendant to whoever it may be, everybody is on the same vibe, and that is what makes it special.
I think it's like also like we're getting into a phase where it's such a shame that music journalism obviously is just, the money's gone out of it. So like where people are discovering music has changed. A lot of people are just discovering music from like the Spotify algorithm or whatever, and that's very like, I'm not going to get into like the politics and all of that behind that, and I'm definitely not trying to piss off Spotify. But like where music discovery used to be is now so curated by people in those companies that it's like it's much like more like it's already curated for you before you even reach it. And even A&R now, like everyone will tell you A&R is all based on like AI, it's all based on data and stats and all of that, which obviously, like, you know, major labels in particular, they're businesses. Like, you know, the Kanye West thing with the over the last couple of weeks has just only made that more prevalent. Labels are a business. If you think they aren't, you're an idiot. And I know that they need data to back up things, but also you're losing that feel and that gut feel. And like, I've never been like an A&R, but I can imagine that the people that go into A&R really go into that job thinking like it's all on gut feel and that passion and that fire and seeing something in someone really early. And it's now they don't really want to see something early. They want to see you with a couple million plays on Spotify and a good couple tens of thousands of followers, and that's what makes an artist like a viable thing. And I mean, I'm going completely off topic, and I can
That's not an A&R.
no, I can go into
A&R
like artists establishing themselves, and they're already established, and they shouldn't really sign anyway because they've already done it. But they've done the hard work. But it's that kind of. I'm losing and I'm missing from what I'm seeing how people are making decisions in the industry now. I'm missing that rock and roll element, and I'm not trying to hark back to the 90s because obviously the 90s has its problems, but it's that fire, and I think that's what makes people take risks on something more. And it is about taking risks. It is like when you're pushing outside your comfort zone, when you're going outside your race or the genre that you like or country or religion or whatever, you are taking a risk, but you've got like people. We're in music for a reason. I keep saying that. Sorry, I apologise.
Never apologise.
Trust that gut feeling over like the data or what's been done before. I think it would just make life so much more exciting. We live in a global world now. It is global. That's why attacking unconscious bias is so important, because we live in a global world. No one sits still for more than 5 minutes. Okay, obviously COVID has like dampened all of our plans, and I think we've all felt like, oh my God, our nomadic spirit's been like dampened this year, and because everyone's so nomadic now. But somehow, as always, the music industry is about 5 years, 10 years behind that, and they're still trying to keep everyone in their separate countries and genres and things like that. So. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry, just blather on.
I read your recent article with DJ Mag, and you mentioned no major festival promoter or booker should have any excuse not to have a far more balanced lineup moving forward. So tell us more about how Black Bandcamp can go some way towards helping.
Well, I think even pre-Black Bandcamp, there shouldn't have been an excuse.
Yeah,
the issue is if you've got white cis males who are booking their white cis male friends, that's your circle. That's all you know. This brotherhood of white guys, that's who you book. So even pre-Black Bandcamp, there wasn't an excuse. And I know if everyone's been on Twitter, there were loads of festivals and agencies being called out, loads which have now actually closed because they're so embarrassed and ashamed to have been called out because of what they've done, rather than actually saying, do you know what, we messed up, we're going to stay open and we're going to just shut and run under the rock that we've come from.
Yeah.
So the issue is that you've got these white cis males who are friends of white cis males who book each other, who say, oh yeah, get this person to do, and it perpetuates. Black Bandcamp as a platform, what it basically does, it takes all black people from Bandcamp and puts it on a website for you. So you literally don't have to filter through the millions and billions of people on the Bandcamp website. They're there for you. People from across the world, across all genres, all ages, like literally covering the entire music industry, as it were. So the groundwork has already been done. The resource is there. You need to go and proactively utilize it, and not just, this whole kind of black square thing pissed me off so much. People that posted the black square, it's performative. Actually do something, do something and show that you've done it. So in a year, go back and say, these are our stats and we've increased this by X%. Don't just say you're going to do it and post a black square and say, oh, yeah, we stand because techno's black music, blah, blah, blah. That's boring. Like everyone knows techno started in black culture. They don't need to tell us that. Do something about it. So I think Black Bandcamp should be used as a resource for people to go and discover and find new artists. And it's not something that should be done in a tokenistic way, because that's another thing that pisses me off.
Yeah, I was
that
gonna
people will say, oh yeah, I've now got like 3 black women on my lineup, tick. No, but what are you actually doing? Because it's that immediate gratification is not what people want. It's the long term. What are you invested in these people? Are you paying them? I think, yeah, there's a lot to it. But yeah, I think venues, promoters and bookers never had an excuse, but now even more so, they don't have an excuse to not book black folk. In electronic music, as we've been saying, there's so many different genres, and not just UK and the US, because that's another thing that bothers me. We talk about diversity, but intersectional diversity is what people should be looking at, not diversity. So you had this in 2015 with the rhetoric of like, book more female DJs. That's brilliant, but they're all white female DJs. That's not diversity. The same thing with, for me, for Black Bandcamp, it's great that we're showcasing black people, but actually, and this is me being honest, as people don't like to be, 84% of the people on Black Bandcamp are from Europe and the US.
Yeah.
What happened to Africa?
Yeah.
What happened to Asia? What happened to the Pacific Oceans? What happened to the Caribbean? So I think it's one thing, you know, using these resources and booking people, but is it the same people? Like, is everyone just going to book like the same known black people?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We saw it with the same gender rhetoric. It's the same 5 white women that get booked to headline the same festivals, and we all know who they are. Yeah. So I think there's so much work to be done. It's one thing utilising our resource, and there's so many resources out there.
I was going to say, what are other ones that you're aware of?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, there's like so many communities in the UK and US. So like Disc Woman, which is run by Frankie and Umfang. Mm-hmm. They're a New York-based agent and booker, but what they do is their roster is completely women, but women of a diverse background. So it's not just white women. Yeah. You've got black women, white women, women from Chinese descent, etc. They're, to me, one of the biggest players. So they look after Umfang, Object Blue, Fauzia. There's so many women who are coming up in the scene now, who they look after from across the world, of different backgrounds, and they're one that I would look to. But I do think people really need to check themselves. Yep, it's fine to do the whole, we're going to book these people, but is it the same people? And are you actually being diverse? Are you being intersectional? That's the thing. It's the intersectional bit that I don't think people are cracking, because I think the whole female thing is a brilliant example of it. Yeah. There was this whole males, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So we cracked the female thing, but it's the same women. Yeah. So if we're going to do it properly, let's do it properly. Mm-hmm. You know, we could that could take us years, but if people genuinely are convicted in doing it, then do it. Book a black woman from Africa and the Caribbean and Europe and America. Book a black gay woman. Book a black disabled. Like, actually be diverse and be convicted. And if you're not going to, then don't bother. Yeah.
I mean, I think when it comes to being a festival booker, that's where the responsibility lies. And yes, it is always easy to go, oh yeah, they're the top 40 artists at the moment. They're the ones I'm going to book. And it doesn't go any further than that. They're the ones that are pulling. They're the ones that are going to sell my tickets. So where the responsibility for those bookers comes in, because as much as I totally agree with many things you're saying, on the other hand, I am worried that it is open to abuse when you start looking at booking lineups on anything other than talent. And that has to be, but what it has to be is, instead of your world of, you know, where you're actually looking at, and your research has to be broader, and that's where their responsibility comes in.
That's where I think the whole tokenistic thing comes in, because I wouldn't book someone because of they tick a box if they were crap. Yeah, that's exactly. Tokenistic. Yeah. And that's what people are doing. That's the problem, I think I would book someone if they push the sound that my platform pushes. They're sick at what they do, but they also happen to be that thing. And I think it's actually, it's not that hard to decipher between just being tokenistic, because what they're doing is literally Googling the RA top black people, and they're just reaching out to them. Yeah. They've not listened to their mixes. Lazy. They've not listened to their mixes. If you want to do it properly, you invest in following that person's journey, looking at where they've played, what sound are they pushing, are they producing, who are they managed by. You actually invest in that person, and then you do it. So I think it's just about people opening their eyes and brains outside of their circle and following people's journeys, because all it takes is, you know, if I go to a shop and buy the same sweet every day, I don't know what other sweets taste like. Exactly. If you go and taste other sweets and then you say, actually, I like that flavour sweet, I'm going to buy it more often, that's exactly what it's like. Yeah. So it's not, I don't think it's about like
It's not about that tokenistic thing.
Yeah, yeah,
It doesn't
yeah.
have to be 50-50.
Yeah,
and that,
yeah. And then what will
everything's
happen
going
is
to be okay,
naturally
you know?
your circle will grow naturally.
exactly.
It will grow naturally. And actually, if you look at, because I'm 26, if you look at the younger bookers now, they're doing it better than the older generation.
Yeah.
They're not
I
so
say
stuck
older
in their
generation, I
ways.
mean people who were raving in the 90s. It's the ones that are my age who are actually proactively diversifying their circles,
Pushing the boundaries.
because if your circle's diverse, then it's not forced. You're not just forcing it. You shouldn't have a circle that's not diverse in the first place. And if you have a circle that's not diverse, then that's an issue, because then you're kind of you are in a sense having to force yourself to look for those people. But I do have to say that there's a lot of younger 20s, London and Bristol, the ones that I'm familiar with, who are promoters because that are doing it properly and authentically. And that's the thing, you know. I've had people try and book me. Went on a Twitter rant about this. If anyone follows me, I had a booker that tried to book me a couple of months ago, and I went on RA and looked at what their previous lineups was. They've never booked a black person ever. Now I'm not going to play for someone who's been running as a well-known London promoter for 10 years and has never booked a non-white person. I'm not about to be that tokenistic. So I replied to them and I said, thank you. However, I've looked at your receipts, I've checked your receipts, and you've never actually had a diverse lineup. Can you just explain why? And if this is like a genuine thing, I'd want to understand, engage with that. I turned down the offer for other reasons, fee, and then I saw that they'd booked 3 other non-white DJs who are similar age to me and like are quite well known. And that's where you have to think as a black person, is that person only booking me to tick that box, or are they doing it genuinely? And I spoke to the other DJs and they said, no, this promoter's never reached out to me before. So it's some people have actually just gone so far that it's kind of, you can't come back to it.
Yeah.
You've been run for so long and you've never been diverse. You actually can't recover from it and actually serves you right. Whereas I do think there are some promoters and events and festivals, I have to say, like the younger ones again, who are doing it properly. And unfortunately, those that missed the boat and are jumping on the bandwagon now can sail off because it's too late. Yeah.
Charlotte, I'd be interested to know, as like an artist manager, is it important to you that, you know, in a similar way, that, you know, people aren't just doing this now? What do your artists feel?
Yeah, I mean, we had an incident a year ago at an industry event where one of my artists was DJing, and she's DJing like a really mix of music. It was a really dope set. And all the younger like women are getting down and like loving it. And it was like a really kind of out there set, but it was just her selection, and she was booked to play her selection. And these older white women came up to her and just attacked her for it. Like, I've honestly never been so mad as a manager and felt so protective. Like, my proper like mama lioness came out, and I was like, and I had to walk away for a minute, and then I took these women aside and I was like, this artist has been booked based on her selections, based on her track record. This is what she was booked to play. If you have an issue with it, you have an issue with the promoter. How dare you go up to an artist and question what they're doing on at a set? That is like, honestly, like, huh. But I was just like, Jesus Christ, these are people that work in the music industry. These are the people that are in charge. And they can't even listen to music that's not like, what, ABBA? What do we want to play? Like, seriously, like this is not a wedding. Like, cool if you go to like your mum's wedding or your aunt's wedding and you want to listen, like, that's fine. But this is an industry event. Like, why are we not pushing boundaries? And so like that stuff like that really grates on me. Really, really, really grates on me. I think I can go on.
No, I was going to say, for your artists, it's like that shatters you.
Oh God!
And this is why I think it's important when you speak about diversification.
Yeah.
When we say like diversifying the dance floor, it's not just the lineup; it's holistic.
Yeah.
Who's doing the sound? Who's doing the lighting? Mm-hmm. Who's at the door? Who is serving me drinks? Who's in the crowd? And this is the thing: if that isn't reflected holistically, then you've just got one non-white person behind the booth,
and that's
with a complete white audience or a complete male audience, whatever we're talking about, and that's still marginalised because then.
Yeah,
it's so deep. Like, it's so deep. You know, if the bouncer doesn't reflect you as a person, are you going to want to even walk in? If the people in the room don't reflect you as a DJ. Are you going to feel confident in yourself
and
to
as
DJ?
an artist, like at the end of the day, like you're dealing with when you're dealing with artists, you're dealing with people that like they are intrinsically, I'm not saying fragile, but like that's their art, that's their child, that's their baby, that's their product that they're putting in the world, and they've been booked to do that. And then this audience are turning on them and coming up to her, and like that really, really grated on me. And but it's just sorry, I'm like probably losing my train of thought. But it's things like that. And then there's also like stuff at the moment where it's like with pop music, it's like everyone's looking for the next Billie Eilish. So that's great for the girls that sound like Billie Eilish, but there's a bunch of other girls that are making really great music in pop or whatever genre. And it's like if they don't conform to what is successful, again, we go back to like people only booking what they know or what they already know to be successful. And if you go and I really wish people would go and look to other industries. I think in the music industry, we have a real problem with only doing what we've done before. And go and listen to podcasts from people that are working in other industries, tech industries, medicine, aviation, whatever, I don't know. Law, like, but like go and listen outside of like all the time. I think that's ultimately what this comes down to is all the time, keep looking outside of what you're doing in your day-to-day and your environment. Keep looking beyond it because I promise you it's so much more interesting. It really is.
Yeah, I think just going back to the responsibility for our industry, for our clubs across the board is everybody making mistakes across the board of their intention. So, you know, bookers not interested in why they're being booked, just how much money they're going to get for their artist, not going any further than that. Just keep on whacking up the fee, and that's all they're interested in. So, you know, and are they actually booking them into the right club that is going to have that? Have they had that conversation with the promoter? You know, all of these relationships that we should have within our industry, because vibe does attract tribe. So if you're doing it wrong and all of your intentions, if you're booking the wrong bouncers, if you've not got, you know, a nice environment that's happy for females. One of the things that is really critical that I've seen especially in the last 5 years, is that so many, especially in the tech house scene, the clubs have become so male dominated. It is like walking into a lion's den for any female. Like it is testosterone city. It is 97% males, and you know, I'm a pretty strong woman. I've been in this for a long time. There's no 20-year-old that's going to want to walk into there. It's not a comfortable environment. Mm-hmm. So everywhere across the board, everybody has to have responsibility, be honest intentions, get the balance between the music and the money.
Yeah.
Of course, we've got to make money. But if you get the balance, then that's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
That's where we all want to
Wouldn't it be really nice in this year of us all doing nothing and all sitting in our pajamas at home, if we all just went away and treated our industry with some respect and all read and did some research like anyone else would do doing any other career role, or go back to university, and we all just learnt and took a minute to reflect and all came back as more enlightened beings, because it's not that hard. It's just go and read and listen and
digest.
Well, now's a great time to do that. Like, you know, there's no...
Like, at the end of the day, like, we're not going to be having a big rave in quite a while. We've probably got at least another year until things start going vaguely back to normal. So we really have got some good time to actually genuinely do the work. And it's work.
We have a massive, massive, massive chance now, before anything opens again, to reset this and to make our industry safe before the clubs open again. I'm involved with DJ Rebecca, who has just come out with the #MeToo, #ForTheMusic campaign. This is, we're asking people to sign a pledge. We only just got started, but it's been a Mixed Mag Resident Advisor across the board. We want to root out the wrong people in this industry, make sure that DJs aren't thought of as abusers or egotistical narcissists. We don't need that. We want to get back to, for the music, for the responsibility, and make our clubs and our industry safe, so that more females, more blacks, more minorities want to come to our industry and our clubs, because our one is the safe place to be.
Yeah, I think, that's a good way to wrap up the conversation. But I just want to point out that shesaid.so have got a list of anti-racism resources as well. They includes pages that you can donate to, podcast articles, books, and guides to allyship. And Survivors Network also has a load of resources to read up on. So thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time, and
really
thanks for
well.
stepping
Thank
in.
you.
And I hope everyone who's watching at home has enjoyed it, and I hope that you can understand what unconscious bias is, positive and negative. And yeah, we can see what we can do to create some positive change.
Make a difference.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
Sounds good.